So today we're going to talk about consumption. Consumption is especially important to the economist to understand consumption because consumption has obviously a very close relationship with production. When consumption goes down, production goes down, and then we have problems like unemployment, lower standards of living, people worried about losing money, etc. So the economist needs to think a lot about consumption, and by consumption we don't just mean buying things from shops, etc., but just consuming what is produced. For example, this lesson is a form of consumption, or a scientist researching medicines are a form of consumption eventually. Any development, technological development, any development into a green economy will lead to consumption. So let's not just think in a very black and white way that consumption is negative, because it's not. Without consumption, there is no production, there is no activity, jobs. People have no reason to get up. It's connected to production. First of all, consumption, the economist is very interested in the disposable income. The disposable income is the income after taxes are taken off, or other charges, like for example pensions, contributions to pensions, maybe contributions to the health service in England is automatically deducted, or maybe some form of unemployment insurance, etc. So what is left that we can spend in the economy after all these things are taken off? That's called disposable income. Disposable income. With the disposable income, we can spend it in the shops, or we can save it. These are very important aspects of the economy. Real disposable income is when inflation is taken off. Disposable income can be deceptive if we don't consider inflation and take off inflation. If I have the same wages as last year and the same taxes, etc., but prices have gone up 10%, really I've lost 10% in disposable income. So real disposable income is the disposable income adjusted for inflation, to show what I can really buy. Inflation, you've got to remember, is that prices are going up. They're not always the same. Prices change all the time. And that what we're really interested in, an economist is really interested in, is what people can actually buy, not what the prices are. So we have to take off the inflation. Economists are also interested in utility. With our disposable income, our habits, our patterns of buying and trends of buying will be decided by utility. Utility is the satisfaction we get from using something. Okay? It's not the use of something, but it's the satisfaction. And we can think, utility really changes. If we have one hamburger, maybe that gives us a lot of utility. We buy the hamburger because we get that much satisfaction from it. After 20 hamburgers, the satisfaction changes to less and less utility, until we don't want it at all. So utility is important, and it's not so rigid. We talk about the marginal utility is what we get from the latest consumption, and we find as we consume more, so the utility will decline of a specific product. So utility, very important. Factors which affect the level of consumer expenditure. Okay, so we've got to understand what changes our spending, what impacts on our spending. First obvious one is income. Our income, if it's more, we will have the possibilities of spending more money. If it's less, the consumption will go down. But also wealth. People, when they're very rich, this changes the way we spend. Obviously, the rich will be able to have to spend a larger proportion on goods and services they don't essentially need, like jewellery, for example. And just the feeling of being wealthy. Wealth is different from income. Income you get monthly or yearly from maybe an activity or a job, etc. Wealth is your patrimony, and if people feel wealthy, they'll spend in different ways. So that will influence it. Consumer confidence is very important too. If people feel that the economy is going well and they'll have a job for a long time, if they feel secure, they're more likely to spend, for example. And then this will affect how people spend. If they're not feeling so secure, then they will tend to save and be a lot more prudent. But we find even when people are feeling insecure about their jobs, about the economic situation, they tend to buy more expensive brands sometimes. For example, more well-known brands. They'll choose brands that give them a feeling of security, even though they're a bit more expensive, strangely enough. So consumer confidence does have a big influence. And then interest rates. Obviously, if interest rates are high, people will prefer to put the money in the bank or in some savings scheme, some financial product, instead of using it for consumption. So that has an impact. In the lesson, we'll be looking at how the different groups spend in different ways. There are differences with young expenditure, young consumption, older consumption, maybe middle-aged consumption, spend in very different ways. But also in other groups like rich and poor. The rich spend a lot more of their income on unnecessary products which increase quality of life, and the poor spend much more on products which are very essential to life, etc. So we need to look at that a little bit. Now, savings. People put money aside to save, and an economist is interested in the proportion of savings. The savings ratio is called. How much people put aside of their income as savings. And in Italy, traditionally, this is very high. In England, it's low. We have the government in an opposite behaviour. For example, in Italy, the government tends to borrow a lot, and whereas the people, the public, save a lot, whereas in England, the government save a lot and are very prudent, whereas the people, the public, tend to spend a lot and borrow a lot, not save much. And this is very important. Remember, savings is a part of the economy done by the families. It goes into the banks, and that the banks can use that as investment for often, the families will use certain financial products, for example, maybe bonds or debentures of companies, etc., as savings. So this is a very important aspect of the economy too. Now, it's important to understand why people save. Maybe people save for consuming. So if you want a car, maybe you don't have the money and you will save to save for a car. People also, families, will save because the interest rates are high, or they'll not save because maybe they're low. So this changes how people behave with their money in the economy. The interest rates. Often the businesses, when interest rates are very high, instead of investing, they'll just put it in the bank and try to make interest instead of risking it in an investment. That high interest rates can be dangerous for that reason. Consumer confidence is important again for the same reason. If people are not confident, they won't spend, they'll save the money, and that will influence savings. If they're worried for their jobs, they won't go out and just spend and not worry about tomorrow. And then you've got the availability of these savings schemes. Often there's different savings schemes that maybe you can't touch the money for many months, maybe even years, without a penalty. So that will influence savings. If people tie their money up and they can't touch it for a long time. Borrowing. Why do people borrow money? People borrow money, again, the interest rates have a big influence. If it's high, then maybe they don't borrow so much money, especially businesses who are looking to invest money. If the interest rates are high, they would prefer to put their money in the bank and just collect interest instead of investing it. If they're very low, they'll borrow money and invest it, because they'll know they'll be able to make a profit that will be much higher than the interest rate. So, for wealth reasons, if there's a lot of wealth, a lot of patrimony. In Italy, lots of families have big patrimonies, and the borrowing is traditionally quite low in Italy for that reason. And then again, consumer confidence. If we're worried for our job, then it's less likely we would borrow, reasoning that if we lose our jobs, we won't be able to pay it back, and we will be in a very difficult financial position. So that will affect our borrowing. If people aren't very confident of maintaining their income, then they can plan for 5 years, even a mortgage, borrowing for a house. They can plan for 20 years. If they feel confident that things will continue.